A lot has happened in the last week of football. Manchester United, Real Madrid, Vinicius Jr. throwing a tantrum, Liverpool versus Arsenal, and we recently had the Carabao Cup matches, which had a few surprising results. But obviously, we need to start with a big talking point, not Vinicius for once, but rather Manchester United. Erik Ten Hag has finally been sacked. We all knew it was coming. It was going to happen sooner or later, and they've moved rather quickly. So there were rumors of Ruud van Nistelrooy maybe taking over for a few months or something like that. But Ruben Amorim is said to be the next Manchester United manager, a former Portuguese international. He's won a lot of trophies in his playing career, and he's done the same with Sporting. He broke a 19-year curse that they had, not a curse, but they didn't win the title for 19 years, and he led them to a double. He's still doing a pretty decent job. But I feel like United should have made this move at the start of the season. Like, surely that was the logical thing to do. It felt like a chapter had been closed after Erik Ten Hag won the FA Cup. They came back to defeat Manchester City. The players, it also felt like, is the end of an era or a short-lived era per se. Rafael Varane left, but United kept him. And then the results weren't so great. So, Rohit, yeah, take it away. What do you think of this signing by United? And then also, let's say, the timing of Erik Ten Hag's sacking.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the news that came out was I think Radcliffe and all of the new technical directors wanted to give Ten Hag some time to see whether he can turn things around within the new technical structure, is what they call it, which is interesting to me. Like, what kind of underlying numbers were they looking at, or what were they using to gauge that, hey, Ten Hag might turn things around based on just some technical folks who are changing above him. I'm very surprised. I totally agree with you. They should have probably pulled the plug after the FA Cup, right? Started anew. But I think the problem, we've talked about it. The Man United squad is heavily invested in Ten Hag prodigies and people who followed him from various clubs, right? So I think that probably had something to do with it. But right now, the condition they're in on the league table, at least 14th, right? I mean, there was just no proceeding with Ten Hag anymore. I like Ruben Amorim, right? As a good coach who's got a good track record of winning. He does things, pretty simply. He sets up with three at the back, I think, with two wing backs, right? I think that might help, right? Man United do concede a lot of goals, and having three at the back might help them shore things up. And I think he's also worked with Manu Lugarte, right, at Sporting. So I think he might get the best out of Manu Lugarte, the central midfield signing, big money signing. And I think Man United have decent, forwards, people who got pace who might work with Amorim. So I think this is good. It's not good for the rest of the league because I think Adim, you specifically wanted Ten Hag to stay for eternity, right? So that Man United, never get past anything. But I think this is going to turn a chapter, and Man United have a decent squad. I do see them moving up the table slowly, and they'll obviously have the new manager bounce. And unfortunately, the new manager bounce is going to be against Chelsea at the weekend because it's Chelsea versus Man United.
Yeah, so I was just going through some of the players that he's coached during his time at Sporting, and we've got some really good names like Marcus Acuna, Nuno Santos, Pedro
Hmm.
Porro, Joao Mario, Joao Palhinha. So he's worked with quite a few players who've actually taken the step up, and I know that this happens a lot in Portuguese football. He does seem to be a good manager. My only concern is that he was Liverpool's target, or at least one of our targets in the summer. I think maybe Chelsea were interested in him. I'm not quite sure. And a lot of clubs decided not to go for him. Even West Ham, they were supposed to go
Yeah.
in for him and they didn't go for him. I fear, like the biggest concern I have with this signing is that he plays in a set form, like it's 3-4-3. He doesn't
Hmm.
change it. That means a complete overhaul, at least a partial overhaul of this United squad, where they've spent millions, hundreds of millions. Where do those players go? Their defense isn't that great. I know they've got Delit and Martinez, but who's going to be the third centre back? Johnny Evans. Their wing
Yeah.
backs, the midfield, the strike force. There's a lot of work that has to be done, and a lot of players need to be shipped out. So,
Yeah, for sure.
so that's the biggest concern with Amorim. Like, and he doesn't really have a lot of time.
I think he's officially taken over though. I think it's going to be Rude at the helm.
Yeah, he's going to be ruled at the helm for a while. And United actually did well. They won five. They scored five against
Yeah.
Leicester, I believe, in the Carabao Cup. So even before Ruben Amorim's come in, the players I don't know, are playing better football, but it'll be interesting to see how Ruben Amorim does in the Premier Leagues. We're going to have so many new managers in this league right now.
Mhm.
You've got Chelsea's Maresca, you've got Slot, Amorim, you've got West Ham's new manager. Uh, Now, the other thing I'm also worried about is that United have made so many changes over the years. Is this going to be the right person for the job? It's such a big job still. Like I remember we were talking about, David Moyes replacing Sir Alex Ferguson and how he was the chosen one by Sir Alex, and that didn't go its way. You've had Mourinho come back. You've had not Gus Hiddink, Louis Van Gaal, sorry, Louis Van Gaal there. Uh, Nothing's worked for them. Nothing at all. Will this be the right answer? I mean, the right solution.
Well, yeah, I think the argument there would be they didn't have the right supporting structure behind them. But now with Omar Berrada, I think he's the new CEO. Dan Ashworth, he's the sporting director. So they have some good people there now. Some knowledgeable people behind the coach and up above him in the structure. So I think Ruben Amorim might do decently well. I think their squad definitely isn't a 14th squad, right? And yeah, I think it's only positive. You had to rip the band-aid off. It was not going anywhere with Ten Hag, right? So I think it's gonna get better for sure.
So with a quarter of the season already done and United struggling even in the Europa League, I think they're 21st, three draws in three games. Where do you think United could finish? I'm going first. I think they'll scrape into a top 10 finishing position. I think they might miss out on Europe simply because the new manager is coming in. He has to set his way of playing. These players need to understand that it might click, it might not click in 6 months. We've seen how well it's worked with Slot, how well it's working with Maresca. But there's no guarantee of the same happening when Amorim comes.
Agreed, agreed. I think yeah, I'm probably thinking of somewhere between sixth and eighth, Man United, right? The main thing there is I think they have a decent squad, and with this manager, I think he can get results, especially with the three at the back, just making them more secure. Right? That's the starting point, and they do have strike force kind of that can score goals. They got Garnacho, they've got Rashford, right? One of the strikers been scoring some goals, so I do see them improving, and I think I don't know when Lenny Euro. Remember Lenny Euro? We talked about him.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
been injured all this while. I don't know when he's gonna come back, but he's a really really good young central defender. So if he comes back end of the year or something, they might have a good second half of the season.
It is to be seen. So yeah, that's gonna be something to keep an eye out, especially at the weekend how they do against Chelsea. Maybe
Mhm.
Root can give them a bit of a boost. Speaking of another big story that happened this week, was the Ballon d'Or nomination and Rodri winning it, and there was a huge hue and cry, and it's basically I don't know, Real Madrid just completely lost it. The news that was coming out was Vinicius seemed set to win it. Uh, I don't know. It was a little conflicting because some people are saying Vinicius should have won it. Some people are saying that Rodri was the right choice. Some people rightly pointed out that Rodri had actually done really well for the entire season last year. And the only time he got injured was in the Euro final, which Spain still won. Whereas Vinicius only helped Real Madrid to win the league and I think the Champions League. But he was missing for Brazil in the Copa America. So I could understand if Vinny won it also. I can understand how or why Rodri won it. But Real Madrid's reaction to this was completely uncalled for. I think they all boycotted the ceremony. Vinicius had set up a party where he was going to give his friends Rolex watches, and that was turned down. And he's said a lot of things out in the media. I think even Karim Benzema has come out and spoken about this. It's like he was set to win.
Juvenile.
Yeah, it's like he was set to win the Nobel Prize for something, and at the last second decided not to give it to him, and they gave it to his
Yeah.
direct rival, who actually might have created something terrible for the world. It was insane as to
Yeah.
how they reacted.
Yeah, it's just throwing a fit, right? It's just like a tantrum that toddler throws. It's just ridiculous, right? And you summarized it perfectly, right? I mean, Rodri won, Vinicius could have won, but it's not a travesty that Rodri won, right? So it's not like somebody's done some major injustice. And I was just looking at the numbers, right? Rodri played more matches than Vinicius last year. I think in the last calendar year, he's played 63 matches compared to Vinicius' 49. And if you look at some of the average ratings, Rodri is actually higher than Vinicius, 7.89 to 7.36 out of the score of 10, right, in the last year. So, I mean, it's not like a travesty that Rodri won. But like you said, maybe if you spend like millions of dollars on Rolexes for your friends and now you can't give it to them, you might be mad as well, right? It's like, remember birthday parties? If somebody kind of you want to throw your birthday party, you call all your friends, but they end up going somewhere else. It's like that. Like, what's going
Uh,
on?
it's probably pocket change for Vinicius. But I think one thing that we can say is that, if you take Rodri out of the Manchester City team, they struggle. They struggle a lot. We've
Mhm.
seen them exit the Carabao Cup. Obviously, it was a much changed unit, but they don't look as strong as they did last season after Rodri's injury. But you take Vinicius out
Yeah.
of Madrid, you still expect them to win 99% of the games they go up against, the teams that they face. So I think that just shows how important Rodri is to City, and well, Vinicius isn't as important. And then obviously, more problems for Real Madrid this week with the El
Yeah.
Clasico hammering. Now, I
Yeah.
haven't
I
followed
think
Barcelona. No, so I haven't followed Barcelona as much. Yeah, sorry, you were saying something.
no. You brought up a perfect point, right? I think it's not just Vinicius not winning the Ballon d'Or. It's also that they got a spanking from Barcelona. Take it away.
Yeah, so I haven't followed the Liga for quite a while, but I was presently surprised that the team that Barcelona have now under Hansi Flick, uh, it has a mixture of very young talents that have come through La Masia, and then you've got obviously known players like Frankie De Jong and Robert Lewandowski, and I'm quite surprised to see how well Rafinha is doing there. I remember Rafinha playing for
Amazing.
Leeds, and he's turned into a Ronaldinho of sorts at Barcelona. And I did not think Hansi Flick was going to work out at Barcelona at all. So here's something I found out recently is that uh, there was a lot of tension between Xavi and Hansi Flick, because I think Xavi texted Hansi Flick and he asked him that, are you looking to take over my job or something? And Hansi Flick said no. And he took it over right after Xavi was sacked. But the funny thing is Hansi Flick does not speak Spanish or Catalan.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
apparently he's not reading any of the media, the pressure that comes of being a Barcelona manager. He just does his thing. And it seems to be working. And he's taken a lot of really, really big decisions, like the defender, Inigo Martinez, I believe, who's in his 30s. And he seems set to be kicked out of Barcelona. But after a couple of training sessions, he's kept him. Uh, the players are also doing really well. You've got Lamal, who's, I don't know, he seems destined for greatness. Like,
Yeah.
it is insane.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, right? Like all these kids out of La Masia, they just keep turning up, and it's like, it's like a factory, right? Almost like a conveyor belt. One person will get injured, they'll get another guy who looks the same, who plays the same kind of amazing technical football. I mean, it's amazing. I love some of their players. Lamine Yamal, of course, right? You can't get the ball off of him. He's like 17 years old. He has braces, right? He's playing with braces. His braces are sponsored. What are you talking about here? This is an actual kid. And I think, yeah, that was a good game, right? I like Rafinha's story as well because he was about to be sold to Saudi Arabia. That money was going to be used to buy Nico Williams. But, he stayed back and he's now the captain, I think, right? And he's putting in amazing performances. They beat Bayern Munich right before that in the Champions League. So overall, I think it goes to show, Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., all of these guys, Bellingham, all of them together, and these kids come up and beat them 4-0. Which is a good story. And I think, yeah, that added, insult to injury with the Ballon d'Or, and that's why they all kind of started crying and throwing a fit. But
Uh,
interesting things happening out there.
Yeah, the other thing I also wanted to talk about is how well has Kylian Mbappe gelled with this Real Madrid side. A lot of
I
people
mean,
had pointed this out when they were going to sign him, that
yep.
he also likes to play down the left and then drift inside or drift wide. Exactly the same thing that Vinicius does, exactly the same thing that Rodrigo does. So that was always going to be a problem for them. I believe they had 12 offsides in the game with Barcelona playing a really high line. It seemed like every time Mbappe tried to make a run, he was offside. Things aren't looking that good for Real Madrid. It's going to take Carlo Ancelotti all his managerial experience to deal with that. But I just want to finish off this segment, unless you want to bring something up, with this quote of Yamal. He said this, that I thought I would score today no matter what because I'd gone a few games without scoring. He celebrated quite widely in front of the fans. Then he continued, you really enjoyed when you hear your fans more than your opponents in the stadium. And this is the kicker. A victory in El Clasico is very important, but it is only 3 points, and we have to think about the Espanyol match.
I mean, that's good, right? You see that this
Yeah,
guy is
yeah, yeah.
mature, right? He's not throwing a hissy fit like Vinicius Jr. He's got a level head on his shoulders, right? And no wonder he's doing so well, not just for his club, but also for his country,
Country.
which Vinicius doesn't seem to be able to do.
Yeah. So again, Hansi Flick seems to be a great appointment. He's taken a bit of revenge already because I think Barcelona beat Bayern 4-0 or something, also 4-1 it was.
Yeah.
And now it's 4-0 against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. Wow. I don't think a lot of us saw that coming. Uh, we also need to talk about another top of the table clash that happened last weekend. It was Liverpool versus Arsenal. Uh, so a lot of people actually gave Liverpool a chance in this game because they were saying that there are so many injuries for Arsenal. XYZ has happened. They won't have this. They won't have that. But they had Bukayo Saka starting. I think most of the defenders, Julian Timber was also back. Uh, they only had, I think, Saliba missing because he was sent off in the previous game, right? Yeah, the Bournemouth one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the game was actually pretty good. Arsenal, I think, took the lead. Then it was Liverpool who came back. Then again, Arsenal took the lead. Now, when they took that second goal, right, in the second half, Arsenal, I actually thought that, they're going to really push on. They're going to put us under the pressure because for us, it felt like a repeat of the Chelsea game. We did not have as much control as we would have liked. Arsenal were dictating play. But then they just stopped playing in the second half. For some reason, they started falling down. They started taking time off the clock. They're very negative. And Trent Alexander produced an incredible ball, which Darwin Núñez ran onto and then passed it to Mo Salah. And that was when we started dominating the game. And then I think both teams were pretty okay with the draw. I mean, they took time off the clock. 2-2. I think it was a fair result. But again, Arsenal were a little too negative for me. You had Liverpool down 2-1. This was your chance. We're not playing any great football either. This was your chance to, put it up, make some ground on us. But they let it slip.
I think one of the factors may have been that, only Saliba didn't start, but the rest of the defense kept getting injured, right? For Arsenal, Gabriel went off. I think Timber went off. They had like a young kid come and play left back, but he did play well most of the game. And I think they had Kivior and White and Thomas Partey in the back line. So a lot of injuries there. But I agree with you, right? They took the lead twice and they kind of went into the shell. I think, they should have probably tried to take the win, but you can also understand with these many injuries, maybe it affected them. But overall, interesting game, right? What I loved about it is, again, the class shown by Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah. They turn up when you need to. And Slot understands that. He understands that he has some really high class players, world class players, and to give them the opportunity to hit on the counter is like an easy goal. Like the second goal you guys scored was so simple. Beautiful ball over the top by Trent, and Núñez makes a good run, cuts it back to Salah. As simple as that. Yeah, I liked the game. It was good back and forth. It was a good, top of the table clash. No complaints there. But I think both the teams showed that they definitely title contenders, although Man City are again on top.
Yeah. So Manchester City will be the happiest with that result. But I also wanted to
Yeah.
point out one thing about Bukayo Saka's first goal. Very simple, but he's just so effective down the wing.
Mhm.
Like when the ball was played across right from halfway, I knew what was going to happen. You can predict he's going to beat Andy Robertson. You know he's going to cut inside and then cut outside. And what a finish by him. And
Yeah.
I think this is one of the problems that we have is that our left back positions aren't that great. Robertson, he is a great servant of the club. I think he's got a great engine, but he's not technically the best left back you have. Costas Tsimikas, we're still unsure about it. So I think that's one position we have to look out for and see what happens. But yeah, as you said, a great game. I also want to point out that Darwin Núñez looked actually pretty good after coming off. Uh,
Yeah.
when that through ball was played by Trent, right? I was so scared. I was thinking that David's going to run on and he's going to just smash the ball into the rose head or something. But there seems to be a bit of maturity. Maybe Slott's working on him and
Mhm.
he made a very good pass to Salah. But that is a problem that I think Liverpool will face going forward is that a lot of our players are injured and they're injured for a long time. Alisson's out, I think, until the November break. Same with Jota. Federico Chiesa still hasn't played for us apart from, I think, a few minutes he made. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. We're already thin. We're having to play Cody Gakpo, Luis Diaz, Nunes, and Salah. But one more injury, and there could be a lot of problems going forward.
Yeah. I think the Chiesa one was a bit of a gamble from your end, right? I think you guys bought him just because of the bargain price that he was available at. So I think this is expected. I don't expect him to be fit for majority of the season, right? Maybe he turns things around, but I think you got to give him time, probably this entire to regain his fitness.
Yeah, so I think Slot spoke about this when he was asked about Chiesa's injury issues. He said that, the problem is he needs to adjust to the tenacity and the intensity of the training sessions here and then the football. So I'm hopeful we do something good. In midweek, again, we need to talk about the Carabao Cup fixtures. I think that's going to be the final point so far. Liverpool face Brighton. Uh, Very entertaining game. Obviously, both teams were a little changed. We gave Tyler Morton a chance. I think Gerald Conser started. And one player that really, really stood out for us is our third choice goalkeeper, Yaros. Uh, you should listen to him. I believe he's Czech or he's Slovakian. I'm not sure, but he has the most Scouse accent you will ever hear. You'll think he's a Scouser. It's hilarious. So he produced some
Oh.
incredible saves. I actually believe that we have the strongest goalkeepers or the best goalkeepers in the division. Allison is a great number one, possibly the best. Kelleher, a great number two, and Yaros, a great number three. So maybe
And
Allison.
Mamardashvili,
Oh, that's really, yeah.
great
So
number
we have
four.
four great
Yeah.
goalkeepers. So yeah, and Cody Gakpo was excellent again down the left. If you haven't seen, you should see his first goal that he scored. Absolutely stunning. Something that Arjen Robben would do down the left, he did it down the right. Just cuts in and smacks it into the goal. Uh, Brighton had a few chances, and the funny thing is that we will face Brighton again. I think at Anfield this weekend. So that's going to be a really good game. But Chelsea, I think, were knocked out, right, of the Carabao Cup.
Yeah. Talking about facing the same opposition back to back, like Chelsea faced Newcastle in the Premier League this past weekend, and then we played them again yesterday in the Carabao Cup. Premier League, obviously, we came out 2-1 winners. Carabao Cup, we lost 2-0 yesterday. But it's for Chelsea, it's almost like two different teams, right? We fielded a completely different 11. During the win, of course, Cole Palmer shown, right? He scored a goal and he had a hockey assist, like you like to call it, one of the passes of the season to Pedro Neto. And then that was a good performance, right? Newcastle did have chances. They scored one goal, and there were some goal line clearances from Reece James, who played a full 90 minutes after a long time. But overall, it was a good performance from Chelsea. Chelsea are fifth. But coming to the EFL Cup game yesterday, which we lost 2-0, it was a completely different team. And this is my concern, right? Till now, our second 11 per se have only played, lower league opposition in the EFL Cup and FA Cup, and like really, really weak teams in the Conference League, right? So they have not been up, for the intense kind of pressure and speed that some of these other teams play with. Newcastle, they did make changes, but I think they made five changes. They still had a lot of their first team starting. And you could see that. We conceded two goals very early, not up to the intensity. We did have some chances, but I don't think with this, two different sets of 11 approach, Maresca is going to get very far, at least in the FA Cup, right? Conference League, you don't know the team. The quality of teams is not great. But I think at some point of time, he has to start putting in, some of our first team players as well. So let's see what his strategy is. But I actually don't really care, right? I'd rather get like a top four finish in the Premier League and then maybe try and win the Conference League. And, our squad is not as mature to compete in four competitions, right? So it's okay. We lost yesterday in the Conference League, but I'm not really too concerned about it because it was essentially our second string squad. But just to play the devil's advocate, I think that second string squad also cost like upwards of $600 million to assemble, right? So that is not good allocation of resources. If you spend $600 million to assemble a second 11 who are losing to Newcastle, I think you've not done a fair justice to your first team. I don't know. What do you think?
Uh, so I don't think Maresca can be at fault for the cost of the squad.
No.
Yeah. And I think he's openly said that he has a squad of, I think, 25 players and the others he doesn't really care about. So uh, Sure, the numbers will obviously point to that, Chelsea had a 600 million squad and they still lost. But I think you're right in saying that, maybe Maresca doesn't care about the cup competition. Getting back into the Champions League is obviously huge, especially given how financial fair play now works and the issues that you've had previously. So getting into the Champions League will be huge for Chelsea. They look good, especially in the Premier League. Obviously, there are certain things they need to work on, but I'm pretty impressed with Maresca. Remember we were speaking
Yeah,
about him not being here till December. That's been completely dismantled. I
yeah,
think he seems to be a
absolutely.
very, very good signing. I had a lot of concerns about this signing, but obviously it's good for them. And yeah, I think the team will improve obviously with time, and obviously once Maresca gets a few more signings that he wants, we'll get to see the best of Chelsea. But
Yeah.
there's one thing I needed to point out is that it's very upsetting to see Chelsea being knocked out of the AFL Cup because it would have been amazing had we played Chelsea again in the final. I think we played you in the
Uh,
AFL Cup
yeah, yeah, yeah,
twice
yeah.
back to back.
Last couple of years.
Yeah, so it would have been amazing. I think there was an FA Cup final also in between, so it would have been quite
Yeah,
fun to again run this back. But anyway, moving on, we got to talk about this weekend's matches. There's a really big one to start the calendar. I think it's Newcastle versus Arsenal. Will Arsenal
yeah.
again play this? I don't know what Jose Mourinho kind of football. I think even Jose Mourinho played better football with Chelsea, and also I don't know what's going on with Arteta. We got Liverpool, Brighton, Bournemouth. They play Manchester City, who were also knocked out of the AFL Cup by Tottenham.
Hmm.
So again, very interesting matches. Then Bournemouth had beaten Arsenal a couple of weeks back. So maybe another big upset coming up. And obviously, the big game that we've spoken about is Manchester United hosting Chelsea. So your thoughts on any of these games? Of course, you'll talk about Chelsea, Man United.
Yeah, I think the Newcastle game will depend a lot on whether Anthony Gordon is still fit because Anthony Gordon played against Chelsea in the EFL Cup and he didn't play in the Premier League, right? And you could see the stark difference that he brings to the Newcastle team, the energy, the direct running. And I think Newcastle have a decent shot. Bournemouth is playing some decent football. Maybe, they can scrape a point from see. But I think the Chelsea Man United game is actually going to be very interesting because that this is going to be a proper experiment to see how much coaching matters, right? Because Man United basically have thrown out the coaching handbook. They are basically going to play on vibes and the new manager or interim manager bounce, right? And Chelsea theoretically has had Maresca for 3, 4 months, drilled in all of these playing patterns. So let's see. This is a perfect experiment to see whether, all of this tactical stuff actually works or not.
So the scary thing is that whenever United have had this interim manager who's an ex-player, it
Mhm.
has worked for them. It worked under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I don't know, maybe Root can do something, but I think it's going to be a really good game. I like these
Mhm.
kind of games. I'm just glad Arsenal is not playing one of these games because it's going to be really, really, really terrible, tough, negative affair.
Yeah.
Man United Chelsea, I'm sure, will not be negative. It's going to be a really fun game, and hopefully we get to see a lot of goals. And hopefully Chelsea win because I don't want United to win. So with that, we like to end this week's show. Do let us know what you think about it. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to discuss, please like, share, and subscribe to our content. And until then, take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.